Hello, everyone. Welcome to Volley Mama Pod. This is episode 2, and my first guest is April Birdsong Isaacs. April is a coach currently at T Street in Irvine. She's also a player, and she's also a mama to an up-and-coming, aspiring young athlete called Jacy. Welcome, April.
Thanks, Amy. It's good to be here.
I am so excited to talk to you. You are such an inspiration in everything you've done in the volleyball world, but you're also an amazing mom. And so today's conversation, we're going to really be talking about what it's like to raise a young athlete when you are yourself a player and a coach. And I did it myself with Jalen, and your journey is similar to mine, but it's just beginning. So I'm really excited to hear all you have to say about that, the struggles, the rewards, everything. So why don't we start out and you just tell us your background in volleyball and how you started in the game.
When I was little, probably 6 or 7 years old, my parents played in a church league, and every chance I got, I would get out on the court and play, and which meant practicing my serve. And so I just kind of was there and a gym rat as much as I could be. And then, back in our day, you didn't start volleyball till 7th grade. And so just having an athletic background, growing up with two older brothers, always having to fight for everything. I just, learned the competitive spirit and played throughout high school. Went to state my senior year. It was the first time our volleyball team had ever been to state. And then had a scholarship to college to play at the University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas, and had a wonderful opportunity going to the national championships with that organization. So it was fun. And then started coaching. And I went through a lot of different things before I actually landed officially in coaching. And coached camps and clinics throughout college, went back and helped my coach in high school run two-a-days and all that stuff. And I knew I wanted to stay in volleyball. I just didn't know how. And then it was really funny. My club director from my junior or sophomore through senior year in high school asked if I could help out with his college team. And so I started coaching with him, and he actually put my resume into an open position for a head coaching role without my knowledge. And so I received a phone call asking about an interview and was a little bit confused because I hadn't put my my name in the hat. Ended up getting that position at Concordia University, Texas, back in the early 2000s, and coached there for a number of years before we moved out to California. Started coaching beach while I was in Texas, pursued beach and indoor in California, had babies, took some time off of indoor for a while, and then decided to come back a few years ago. And it's been fun since then.
So when did you start playing beach? When did you start playing beach?
I was about, I want to say 32-ish, 32. I was in Texas. There was a gentleman, Fred Rojas, who was, a good friend of ours in Austin. And he grew up in Santa Barbara playing East Beach with Crutch Karai and decided to take the baseball route instead of the volleyball route. And so he was kind of known as the godfather in Austin for sand volleyball. And I started playing co-ed. I didn't know a lot of women that were playing at the time, so I played co-ed for my first year and was really kind of frustrated with, I would ask everybody, where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? Because, as you know, volleyball's not black and white, but there's a starting point, and then you move from there off what you read.
Yeah.
And everybody just kept telling me, oh, you just have to keep playing. You'll figure it out. There's no where you're supposed to be, blah, blah, blah. And so I got really frustrated and was about to never play sand again. And Fred pulled me aside and he said, are you really wanting to learn the game? Do you want to train and learn the game, how it's supposed to be played? And I said, yes, that's what I've been asking all summer. And he said, "Well, I know you're about to start your two-a-days and be in season with your college team. So next spring, as soon as it gets warm enough to train, if you get the girls, I'll do the training." And so he really kind of took our group under his wing and started teaching us how to be efficient in the sand, not playing indoor on the sand, but actually play beach volleyball.
Hmm.
And it kind of just developed from there. My love of the sport grew, and came out to California and got to play a ton my first, 10 years here, and even learned more about the game and sat at many a tournament with you watching Jalen and other phenomenal athletes playing beach, and learned a
Yeah.
lot talking to you. And so it's been fun.
Well, we met around that time. We've known each other for, gosh, over 15 years. But I remember I started training with you guys because, again, at that time, there was no one really training, like no one
Yeah.
drilling. You're one of the few people I know that to this day enjoys drilling, which I think we can always get better and touch the ball as many times as we can and drill. I still love drills
Yeah.
just as much as I love competition, because when you're drilling, you're improving those skills, so when tournaments come, tournaments are easy, like, easier than drilling, really.
Yeah.
Um, but you have an entire volleyball family, so your husband played, or still play I don't know if he still plays now, but what was that like? So when you decided to have babies, you have 2 children, how did you incorporate volleyball, like, into the family? Did you want them to play right away, or were you like, "Well, I want them to do other sports"? Because did you go right into volleyball right away, or did you play other sports too? I think you said you played a couple other sports or just volleyball?
I played everything that was
Okay.
offered at our
Yeah.
junior high and high school. There wasn't
Mhm.
much to do. I had been in gymnastics for a while, but knew I was not going to be a competition gymnast. 3rd or 4th grade, I knew I was too tall to be an elite gymnast. But it was definitely a wonderful core. I
Yeah.
recommend gymnastics for anybody who's an athlete or wants to go into athletics. But when I got pregnant with Jacy, the very first thing my husband said was, "Oh, well, there goes our volleyball. We can't play anymore." And I was like, "What? Why?"
Mm,
"Well, we have a baby now, and or we're going to." And I just, kids are resilient, and they will learn to do whatever you have them do.
mhm.
So I think we take her to the court and figure out how to make it work. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, then obviously that's a different story. I'm not going to torture her. Um, but JC and Dakota both grew up on the beach in Santa Monica watching us do drills. When she got old enough, she would sit in her octagonal play yard and play with her stuff. And then she would watch us, and then she would wave to all the people on the strand. And um, quickly became known as the OP Beach Baby, and
Mhm.
as soon as she could crawl out of her octagon, she would hand balls to me while I was coaching, hand balls to Jamie while he was coaching, because we did drills 3 days a week, and he and I would run the drills while the other one was in the drill, and she just kinda grew up seeing it. She would tell everybody when to go shag, and
Yeah.
it was kind of fun. And same thing with Dakota, except for he had big sister to kinda lead the way for him. But, we just decided that was gonna be part of our life, and the kids were gonna grow up around it. Now, we never pushed volleyball on either one of them. In fact, I tried to get JC to do everything but volleyball. Kind of the same thing
Mhm.
with Dakota, but, when you've been around it growing up, and you've been peppering since you were 2 or 3 years old, it kind of just sticks. And she's been on the sand begging to play with the women since she was 5. At 7, she actually, we were playing side out, and she asked if she could jump in, and so they let her, and quickly figured out while she couldn't hit down into the court, she was pretty scrappy on the court. And um now she's 11, and, loving both indoor and beach. So now Dakota, he just turned 9 in June, and he plays as well. He did the tweens program at T Street and loved it. He was 8 at the time playing on the 12s court. just because of his ball control. And he decided not to pursue it just because there were no other boys. So we're looking for boys programs for him to kind of get into. But boys start a little bit later than girls. And so it's kind of been a little bit of a challenge. But, we've definitely had them in gymnastics, both of them, swimming, soccer, tennis, basketball, football. I mean, they've literally tried everything. Golf, they did golf. They both had their own clubs for a while because dad likes to play
Hmm.
golf. And they're
Yeah.
both very athletic, but every time, they ask to do something, it's usually volleyball. So
Okay. So when you got Jacy into club volleyball, junior club, because I know when I got Jalen in, she was around the same age, 10-ish. I wanted her to have like the club experience. I'm sure this happened with Jacy when she tried out. She was probably more advanced because she had grown up playing. I know here in Arizona, they wanted Jalen on the 13s team when she was 10. And I said, no, I don't want that. I want to coach her. I don't want her on a national team. I want her to have fun and have the experience of being a teammate. So and I was a coach at the club as well. So I just kind of made that decision and said, I'm putting her on a regional team. I'm coaching her first year. I want it to be fun. But she did ask the next year to be on a stronger team. So I decided not to coach her after that because I wanted to be mom. So we can move into like when you decided to, or Jacy probably wanted to play, you were at Arete. Am I saying it right? Arete.
Arate.
Arete, in Texas. And did she want to be on your team right away? Did you want her on your team? Did you want to, because she was on a pretty high level team, like her first experience, wasn't she?
So we started going to the pre-tryout clinics, and this was my first step back into club. Like my first year at Arate, I was helping with the 16s and 17s team because I started with them in February, March. So seasons were already going, and the whole plan was for me to restart their academy program for their younger athletes. And so she was in the gym with me a lot whenever it was early enough, and we were going into the next tryout season. So we were signing up for clinics so that she could start doing clinics, not knowing they were pre-tryout clinics, and that was for kids that were actually
Mm.
trying out. And so within 5 minutes of starting, one of the coaches walked up and was like, "Can she play on my team?" And I'm like, "What? Can she play on my tens team? I'm making a tens team. I want her for my tens team." I'm like, "She's 8." And he was like, "Yeah, I know. It's fine. It's fine. She's like the best person on the court." And I'm like, "She's 8. She doesn't need to be playing with 10 and 11-year-olds. She'll be 9, in the fall." And he was like, "I don't care." And I'm like, "Well, we didn't come for tryouts. We just thought it was a clinic." And I'm like, "She's not playing. Like, she'll keep coming to the clinics, but she's not playing next season." And it was actually good because it kinda made her more hungry. She wanted to
Hmm.
play. She was mad at me for an entire year. Um, but it ended up being an 11s team because in North Texas, you have 9s teams, 10 teams, 11, 12, but there's, an 11s division. So the 9s and the 10s play up in the 11s division. And,
Okay.
I think when you're 8 turning 9, the mindset's a lot different than when you're 10 turning 11 or 11 turning 12. And I did not want, it's very similar to you. Like, I didn't want her in that kind of difference of age groups. So the very next season, um, so I coached 18s that season, and she got to come watch. We triple qualified for nationals, and she was like, "I want to win a trophy. How do I win a trophy?" Um, so she was adamant about playing. The club director called me and was like, "Hey, I have a coaching assignment for you next year. I want to know what you think." I was like, "Okay, shoot." And she's like, "Well, I want you to be our tens coach." I was like, "Tens?" So I'm going from 18s to tens. And she was like, "Well, I know Jacy wants to play, and I thought it would be fun if you were, able to, coach her team." And I was like, I mean, I know how it looks a lot when parents coach their own kids, and some people are adamantly opposed to that. And like, I'm not opposed to it, but I wanna make sure it's done the right way and people aren't thinking that I'm favoring her, and she was like, "She'll be the best one on the team, like, I don't think you have to worry about that," and so we thought about it, we decided to go for it. I asked her if she was fine playing for me, and her little 9-year-old brain was like, "I would love to play for you, mom, because I don't wanna learn bad habits. I wanna learn the right way to do things the first time and not have to create bad habits and then fix them, and so I would love to play for you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, here are our boundaries." And she starts
Okay.
talking about our team, and I'm like, "No, there is no our team. There is my team because I was assigned to that team, and you're gonna have to try out, and you're gonna have to make that team, and if you try out and make that team, then it will be our team, but right now it's my team, and when we go into the gym, you're gonna have to call me Coach April. I will not be mom until we get back in the car. When we get back in the car, we can talk from a mother-daughter point of view, but we have to be very clear with our boundaries on me being mom and you being athlete. You're not gonna get any preferential treatment." And she was like, "Oh, I don't expect any." I said, "Yeah, but you need to understand that, when you're talking about people's money and their kids, those are very sensitive subjects. And so, you know, people could say this or that, or say that you're only playing that position because your mom's a coach, or you could do this." And she was like, "Well, that doesn't really seem fair." And I was like, "Well, life's not fair. So you're going to have to work harder than everybody else. You're going to have to you're going to have to always be on. Otherwise, unfortunately, you leave us open to that, conversation. And so, like, you just have to really push yourself all the time." And she was like, "Okay, well, I'm up for it." So she made the team. The way I ran tryouts is like we did a week's worth of evaluations, and most people are giving verbal offers at that point. And I'm like, "No, I want to see everybody for a week, and then we're going to have an invite, and then I'll talk about verbal offers." But I'm not just giving offers to the first 5, 10 people, 12 people that come in the door, because then we won't make the best team we have. Like, we're going to be a tens team playing in the 11s division. Unless you just want to get beat all the time, we have to have a really competitive team. And so we had evaluations, we started having invites, and it was really just like the 20 kids I was kind of trying to choose between. And we ran the whole invite. And then afterwards, when I started making offers, I was very clear with the parents, like, "That's my kid." And they were like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Yeah, she's my kid, and I'm the coach, and she will make the team because of her talent, but I need to be upfront and honest with you about the fact that she's my kid, because I know not everybody wants to play with a coach athlete scenario." And every single one of them were like kind of in shock. We had no idea she was your kid. Like, we see it now that you say that, but like, we just, you don't treat her like she's your kid when you're on the court. We had no idea. I'm like, "That's the goal. Like, I want the whole season to run like you have no idea that my child is on the court. I don't want anybody else knowing. I want you to know and understand that she's not going to get favored because I'm her mom. She's going to have to work harder than everybody else." And so we built a team, played in the 11s division all season, earned a bid to regionals, and we're very close. We were one match away from earning our bid to nationals in the 11s division.
Wow.
So we were in the top 15 or 20 in the 11s division as a 10s team. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really like how you told the parents in advance, that I am the coach. You told Jacy in advance, I am the coach. I don't remember having that conversation with Jalen because we were co-coaches. So I was more like, I'm not really your coach. Annette's your coach. I kind of treated it that way in a way, which kind of worked for me. But I think that's great that you said that to the parents so they know. Did you ever have any, you know, disagreements with Jacy? Like maybe she wanted to be setter, but you wanted her to be outside hitter, or did you have anything like that? Or I mean, not that you specialize that much that young, but I mean,
Right.
some teams kind of do. You know, did you have any obstacles
A
coaching her
little
that
bit.
freshman?
Um, so we were going into the season, preseason stuff. And of course, at 10s, everybody focuses on everything in practice. And then, of course, for tournaments, we needed to have a strategy. So we did have positions. We switched people up a little bit just so that they could kind of have an experience doing more than one position. Um, and I wanted her to either be the libero or the setter, and she did not. She likes hitting the ball. So she wanted to be an outside. And I said, well, you're going to have to play wherever we need you. And she was like, okay, that's fine. And at the point in time, we needed her outside. So when she started the season, she was an outside hitter. But then going into our fourth tournament, we had a setter who um, we moved from a 4-2 to a 6-2. And I think with being that young and not really having experience with that and not really having the court IQ that a kid growing up around the sport has, one of the setters was having a very hard time recognizing the free ball, releasing on time, and setting. And the balls just started like falling through her hands. Like she would be here and it would just slip through, and we were losing point after point. And kind of between matches, I told her dad, who was an athlete himself, so he understood. I'm like, we're having a hard time. Like, we're gonna have to work on this, or we're not gonna be able to have her set anymore. And he straight up told me, I'm surprised you're still playing her at this point. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's sensitive, especially at this age. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that I have your support, and had a meeting with my assistant coach. We talked for about an hour and a half about who could become like replace that setter, and where that young lady would fit best for us. And then had another conversation with the master coach at Arate and had that discussion with him as well. And we all agreed that Jacy should probably be moved into that setter position. Um, but due to the circumstances, I was adamant that we were going to have an open tryout. So
Mm.
I announced that Wednesday's practice, the first half, would be an open tryout for anybody who wanted to be considered for setter. And she reluctantly tried. We had 8 out of our 12
Wow.
that wanted to set. So that was interesting. So I had our master coach and my assistant coach, who was a setter. They were both setters, evaluate, and I just ran drills and it wasn't much different than a regular practice because we had people passing, people setting, people hitting, but really just kind of focusing on who had the court IQ as well as the hands and the quickness to kind of take over that position. And at the end of it, everybody still agreed Jacy should step in and set. So she started setting on the back row and hitting on the front row while we were running a 6-2. And I think from that point on, she really hasn't had any questions or conflicts with positions. Like, she still loves hitting. But even going into this season, she was playing up a year in 12s here in California. And I mean, she's pretty level-headed. She was like, I would love to hit and set on the back row and hit on the front row, but I do understand, like, all of our hitters are taller than I am right now. So if I don't make it to be a hitter this year, then I think I'm okay with that. Um, she still got to hit quite a bit in practice and even in some tournaments, but we haven't had any conflicts about position since that change.
So she still plays for you now at T Street.
No, so for
No.
12s this past season, she played for Coach Curtis and Coach Maddie.
Mm. Okay.
So it's been a full year pretty much almost that she's not been playing for me. So she only played one season for me. She was originally supposed to in North Texas. We had already gone through tryouts for our second season, and she and I were both going to be on the 11s top team. And then we ended up having to move. So once we got here, all of the coaches were pretty much established.
Mm.
So I coached a 14s team and she played 12s.
So was that hard having her on a different team, and you coaching, or did anything conflict? Like you couldn't watch her play, or was that not a problem?
Yeah, scheduling conflicts occurred. There were only 2 tournaments where, she and I were playing on the same weekend, and I didn't really get to see her play. So it wasn't a huge conflict. They were both regional tournaments. It wasn't anything major. And in fact, the second tournament, there was only one conflict for our teams. The second tournament that I didn't get to watch her was because I was at adult nationals when she had her regional
Right.
championships.
Mhm.
So I was able to travel with her because the 14s team I coached was only a regional team. Um, so I missed one of her regional tournaments, and I was able to travel to all 3 of her travel tournaments with her. So
Do you
yeah,
find
that
that she comes to you, more as, like, advice from a mom or advice from a coach, do you
I
think?
think it's about half and half. So there were times this past season where it was more of this is what's happening. How do I deal with this? When she had kind of conflicts with teammates. Not that there were major conflicts or drama. There were a couple of girls on her team that would tease her for being short. Um, like she's a year younger than them. Of course, she's going to be shorter than them, but she kinda took it a little bit personally when I've like, at the beginning of the season, I felt like they were just kind of joking with her. Um, so she came to me as mom for that.
Mhm.
And then there were situations playing wise where she felt like she wanted to get better at certain things, and so she asked if we could do lessons so that she could get better at getting square and leading the header. So from that standpoint, kinda came to me as coach mom. So we got in the gym and did a little bit more work. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty half and half.
Do you feel like you were tougher on her, um, because you're her mom in the gym?
Yes. But, I think part of it, I don't think it's because I'm her mom, but because I'm her mom, I know what she's capable of. I know what her potential is. And my coaching style varies dependent upon the athlete that I have in front of me. If I know this athlete has a lot of potential and is maybe going at 75% of their 100%, then I'm gonna push them more and be harder on them. Um, but if I have a kid who is really trying to get better and maybe isn't super athletic and they're probably giving 100%, then I'm gonna be a little bit more lax with them. And then also personality-wise, we had a couple players that 10 season that were a little bit emotional where, like, I couldn't coach them hard because they would start crying. So everything had to be a little bit more lighthearted and more encouraging. But she's the type of kid that wants to be pushed. She like it didn't matter if she was the top or the top 2 or whatever on the team. She wanted to be pushed. And so like I knew I had to push her more than some of the other kids. So I mean I really do pride myself on tailoring my coaching style to each individual athlete, and she's
Mhm.
definitely the type of athlete that you can push hard and, you kinda need to, because otherwise she gets a little silly.
Did you
So
ever
I
give her advice after a tournament that you were watching about maybe you could have set the middle more, maybe you could have, because I know me personally, it was hard for me when Jalen used to get off the court and beach, and I'd say, "Why are you always serving that one girl who sides out every single time? Like, if you serve the other girl," and then she would just look at me like, and I'm like, "I need to be mom right now," and
yeah,
that was a really hard thing for me because I know I can, I know things. Obviously, I'm a coach. Um, and I want her to know those things. And so it was hard because all she needed after a loss was just probably a hug or,
yeah.
you did your best. And I would be like, why'd you say that girl? So did you
Um,
ever have anything like that with JC?
yeah, I mean, I definitely her 10 season, when I was her head coach, I definitely tried to have that separation. There were definitely times when they overlapped, and I found myself, why this, why that, or you could have done this in this situation. And
Mhm.
she dealt with it really well for a 9 turning 10-year-old. But there was one tournament where we got there a little bit early and we were sitting in the parking lot and we were talking, and she mentioned to me, "Well, I don't always have my mom. I always have Coach April."
Mm.
And I was like, "Well, do you feel like when we're in the car, I'm Coach April and not mom?" And she goes, "Well, sometimes, not all the time, but I do feel like after a tournament or before a tournament, you're trying to talk to me about look for this or look for that, or afterwards, this could have been better, or this could have been, worse." And she's like, I feel like Coach April has spilled over into my car too. And it kind of made me really realize, oh, I think you're kind of right. I've been expecting you to have boundaries whenever I didn't necessarily keep those same boundaries,
Mm. Yeah.
and tried to explain, like, how do I talk to you about post tournament play if it's not in the car? And maybe we sit in the gym for a little bit before we go to the car. And she was like, "Yeah, but you don't do that with anybody else."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, you're right. So maybe we won't do that." And then this year, I've tried really hard to be the parent that coaches want to have rather than the crazy parent.
Mhm. Well, do you find, because that's interesting you say that, because I felt like because I wanted to do that when she started playing for Aspire and a really strong team, I didn't even want people to know I coached in a way. Like I was kind of more backdoor approach. I mean, didn't know people shopped their kids around. Like we just went to the gym and she did one open gym and I said, "Do you like it?" She goes, "Yeah." Like I didn't shop her around. I didn't talk to anyone. They're like, she walked in the gym and we were like, "Who is this girl?" Like, I didn't say, "Well, this is my daughter. She's really good," because she was a beach player. So she had a lot of skill at her age. She was tall too. She's like pretty tall for her age at that time. So I just felt like I didn't do anything. Like I didn't in a way, I didn't really question things, and sometimes I think I needed to, and you probably won't experience this yet, but, closed practices or things that I just didn't see some red flags initially,
Yeah.
and she would come home crying, and I didn't know what happened at practice, and she didn't wanna talk to me, and, I just thought, "Well, she's having a rough practice," when I later learned that one of these coaches was, very hard on the girls in not a good way,
Yeah.
not an inspiring way. Like they didn't they weren't allowed to take risks. They would get yelled at, things like that. So I didn't see those signs when because I was so conscious of me being a coach. I didn't want to like critique her coaches. I just really tried to step back and be mom. But I think because I did that, I was almost like I stepped further back than,
Too far.
you know,
Yeah, we've had kind of that experience a little bit, because I was coaching at T Street and she was playing at T Street. They tried very hard to have our practices around the same time. And
mm,
so every time she was practicing, I was practicing. So I didn't get to watch and I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really build relationships early with the parents because I never saw them.
yeah.
And so um there were definitely things that I wish I had seen going on during practices that I didn't. But I tried, "How was practice? How's it going? Do you have any questions?" But I was really adamant about not coaching her. Like, if we were in a lesson, that was one thing, but really trying in the car to just be like, "Oh, how'd it go? What did you learn today?" And just kinda let her talk. And then same thing after tournaments. I wanted to make sure I was supporting her coaches and what they were teaching her, and, um, like, just letting them have her this year, basically.
Yeah.
And then once my 14 season was over and I was able to go to practices and watch while they were preparing for nationals, there were some things that I learned about the parent group as a whole, as well as players and stuff that I was like, "Oh, that would have probably been nice to know ahead of time." And I think just, like, playing up a year, she didn't have a cell phone, most of her teammates did, so they were on a group chat, she was not on it, she kinda
Mm.
felt left out most of the season, actually all the season, um, and so a lot of the times that we actually talked, it was more so, "Why can't I have a phone? I wanna have a phone, everybody else has a phone," and I'm like, "Well, we're not everybody else, you're not gonna get a phone just because you're playing on a 12s team and everybody else has a phone," and um, she understood and at the same time still, she felt left out, which I get it, like, it makes sense, but there were definitely, situations where had I been a little bit more in tune to things and not coaching, um, could have been a little bit better for her, ways that I could have pushed her, lessons we could have set up for her, um, that would have made the season maybe a little bit better for her.
Do you think she would want you to coach her again?
She actually had a not a breakdown in the sense of a mental breakdown or anything, but just she tries to hold her emotions in a lot sometimes. She's not very outwardly emotional, and there was a night where she kinda broke down crying and was just frustrated with her progress at that point, her teammates making fun of her for being shorter, um, just a bunch of different things. There was school stuff going on and club stuff going on, and it was just kind of all met ahead, feeling left out and having just moved here this year and not having a ton of friends support as well as a new team and people she didn't know. And it just kind of all came to a head and she was broke down crying and just, trying to support her with that. And it was not a fun situation. She made it through. But I mean, I think, we all go through those periods of times, rough patches in our life. And it's good to work through those, and at the same
Mhm.
time, like, I feel like youth sports is earlier and earlier and earlier these days. You have toddlers playing soccer, 18 months old,
Yeah.
and so, like, kids are kind of experiencing those things earlier than what we did,
Yeah.
and it's they're not necessarily emotionally mature enough to handle those things, so
Yeah, and I think the older they get too, I don't know, I think it would have been harder for me to continue coaching her. I just enjoyed playing. I mean, I just enjoyed watching her play. Um, but, you know, is there any, we're getting close to closing here, but is there any advice you have for anyone who does have a child who, wants to pursue the volleyball path and for parents, anything that I mean, I could read off some of your amazing quotes that show just how what I'm going to read this one because I think this one really hit home. Learn to play fearless volleyball. And I think that's something that if a coach yells at you, or honestly, I think that Jalen doesn't play fearless or didn't play fearless in her collegiate career a little bit there because when she was fearless, there was consequences, right? So how do you foster that? Maybe a coach is yelling at them, like if Jacy sets, poorly or bad, and a coach does lose their temper, it's going to happen, or they yell. How do you get an athlete back in the right frame of mind to play fearless volleyball and not worry about those little mistakes? They don't define you. That's another quote you said. Mistakes don't define you.
yeah. My coaching style has always been, especially with the younger ones, that, volleyball is a sport of errors. We're going to make errors. That's how we learn. If you watch any of the Olympians, you're talking about super high level volleyball players and they still make mistakes. So, how can you, as a 10, 11, 12, 14-year-old, 18-year-old, expect to not make mistakes?
Yeah.
And so just kind of getting that into their head. Girl athletes, especially female athletes, are very in tune to their teammates' emotions and they don't want to disappoint. Whereas guys are a little bit more, I'm just going to go crush it. Um, Female athletes tend to really not want to let people down. And so they tend to play safe. And so
Yeah.
I've always tried to foster an environment where they could go for the big shot, go for the excellent play, like dive for the ball and see what happens because you never know what's going to happen unless you train that way. So go for the big swing, swing as fast as you can every time because as you continue to swing fast, you're going to feel like, yeah, sure, you're going to hit balls out or you're going to hit balls in the net, but you're going to feel what it feels like to take that big swing in practice. And where do I need to contact this ball in order for it to go in? And as you do that in practice, then you can do that in games. And then when we need somebody to go take a big swing, you're going to be comfortable doing it. Like, I think coaches tend to talk about just getting the ball in and making the safe
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
But then in a game or in a tournament, especially in a big match, they want you to go after it. But then if you haven't developed that sense of you can go after it,
Mhm.
then they're not comfortable doing it. And
Yeah.
so, like, you can't train one way and expect something else in competition. So I've always tried to foster that fearless play. Go for the big dig, go for the hard set, like go for the big swing. Because if you make a mistake, who cares? You're going to learn from it. But if you're just trying to get the ball in, and if people play timid, that's when they usually do make mistakes. Um, so I've always just been that kind of coach, and I feel like she did get a little bit of like the opposite this year. Whereas like we're 3, 4 tournaments in, and I'm like, why are you swinging so slowly? How
Mm.
come when there's a ball that's in the back row that you could hit, you just send a free ball? Like what's going on here? That was not you last year. And she's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
well, coach says that they want us to get the ball in first, and then if it's
Mhm.
perfect, then go after a big swing." And I'm like, "Okay, but you know how to swing fast. So why are you swinging slow?"
Yeah.
So that was always a thing between us. And this summer has really been or is going to be about like her getting that confidence back to swing fast and hard and instead of giving free balls, at least get around the ball and hit a down ball because that's gonna be harder to defend than a free ball. Anybody can pass a free ball.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of getting her back in that same mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, most coaches just I've coached against teams where I hear the coach say, "Just get it in, just serve it in," instead of "Let's serve the seam between 1 and 6," or whatever. It's just I think as coaches, we just have to remember that if we want them to take those swings in those times, you've got to practice it and give them confidence to do it. And it's okay if they miss. I mean, they're 11,
Yeah. I mean,
12,
and
you know.
who cares if you win a national championship at 11,
Mm.
12, 13, 14? Nobody, no, college coaches aren't looking at that. They're looking at what
Right.
you do at
Right.
17 and 18. And if they haven't developed that at 10, 11, 12, 13, they're not going to have that at 16, 17, and 18. So, like, I think the younger age groups should be focused on developing their skills, their confidence, their killer instinct, rather than just trying to win. And I do know several coaches who have that mindset of just get it in until they mess up.
Mhm.
And they're waiting for the other team to mess up. Well, at some point, you're going to play teams that aren't messing up. And if you don't know how to go after it and try to get that big swing, then you're not going to win. So,
So, how does a parent look for a club that's really kind of preaches that? I mean, you may be the only person in your club, or your club may have coaching education that says this is what we do in 12s and 14s and 13s, like, or we need to win. Like, how
yeah.
do you, as a parent, navigate the club that fosters like what you believe in?
Um, So when we moved to California last August, we were fortunate enough that their tryouts aren't until the beginning of October. So I got the kids started in school, and then JC and I started researching. Well, we had already started researching, but started visiting clubs. So we visited about 6 different clubs. Um, one of the clubs we went to, we really liked their training style, but they did not have an established 11 or 12s program. They didn't have an 11s or 12s team the year previous. And so we knew that that was going to be a little bit difficult for that team to be competitive, and she wanted to be on a competitive team. One of the clubs we went to, the 11s and 12s, well, 11s was non-existent. It was with a club that I know one of the coaches there, and she was very upfront and honest, and I'm thankful for that, that she was like, "Do not have her play for our 12s team. Like, she could play for our 13s team, and I would be the coach, and you could be my assistant, but even at that, our 13s team is not gonna be super competitive in the region, and I'm not sure that you want your 10-year-old playing on a 13s team." And I said, "No, I don't." Just the mindset is completely different,
Hmm.
and so we just visited several clubs, and I just told her, like, "I'm not established as a coach here, but I could coach at pretty much any club. So this is your opportunity to kinda take the wheel and drive, and I want you to think about what kind of feedback is the coach giving you? What's the level of play that you're seeing at that club? Of course, we need to consider how far the drive is, um, and the cost of club, but I want you to really think about who would you wanna play for." So,
Mm.
at the end of the day, she really liked 2 different clubs, and we talked about, coaches, and she really liked Coach Curtis. She thought that he was tough but fair and would help push her. That team was the most competitive team within an hour's radius of where we were.
Mhm.
Um, and then they had a coaching position for me with the regional team, which worked out great. And so at the end of the day, she really just kind of wanted to play on the most competitive team she could. And it was that one. And I think Curtis was a mix of go for it and play it safe. And she
Mhm.
kind of got confused between the two.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, she's, 10 turning 11. So when you tell her two different things, it's going to get confusing. She's not quite, she's really literal at this point. So understanding that things are situational is not, you have to really sit down and explain that to her before she understands that. So she took it very literal and sent more free balls this year than last year.
Yeah. Well, I heard Coach Karai say something about that. It was interesting because he's like, you still have to teach them how to win.
Yeah.
So they're if sending a free ball over to area one because the setter's vacating her defense, and you know that that's open, you're teaching them how to win,
Right.
but you're also trying to get them to actually pass that hit or,
Right.
and that's as a coach is always going to be a struggle because, you want them to learn how to win and everyone loves winning. And if sending free balls over wins, it's hard as a coach to tell them you need to take a swing. I mean,
Right.
you don't have to. Like in beach, when you just do a shot and people get mad at you, they're like, "Hit the ball." I'm like, "Well, I don't really have to because the shot's open." And
Right.
people get mad, like, "Hit the ball." It's kind of the same thing. If I can, if I don't have to, take a huge swing, I mean, I'm going to put the ball away.
Right.
So it is tough. So, well, is there anything else that you want to say about being the mama of a up and coming athlete and maybe also an up and coming young TK athlete, boy athlete?
Just, we just try hard to support what they want to do. And, I've sat down with JC and told her, like, you don't have to play volleyball. Like, just because mom and dad did does not mean you have to. If there's something else you love, we will support you in what it is that you love. And it doesn't have to be volleyball. If you love volleyball and you want to pursue it, we're here to support you in that. But just know that if there's a point that you don't love it anymore, take a break or step away and do something else. Um, we've also had several conversations this year about, your worth is not in volleyball.
Mhm.
You are not a volleyball player. You're not just a volleyball player. You are Jacy, and you are worthy of wonderful things in your life just because of who you are. And it's not solely because you're a volleyball player.
Right.
That's one aspect of your personality, not your whole identity. So that's like one of the things that I've really tried to impress upon her this year, um, so that she knows that we're proud of her for who she is, not because of what she does. And while it's been amazing, her and her team won the USA Division 12U national championships, and that's something that mom never did. Um, we're super proud of her for that. But, we gave her, this is your day. You get to pick dinner. You get to pick this. You get to pick that. But after today's over, put the trophy in your room and we're moving on to the next thing because that's not all you are. So that's my biggest thing. Support your kids and their goals
Mhm.
and what they love, and make sure that they know that that's not who they are. It's just what they do. So,
Yeah, I think that's why we're soul sisters, because I told Jalen the exact same thing back when she was younger. I said, this is mama's sport now. You don't have to do volleyball, but I think it actually helped because she was like, no, mom, I love volleyball. It's like the best sport ever. But, we both agree on that. It's as long as they're doing something, to me, as long as she's moving her body and challenging herself, at that age, I was happy with. And, well, I love volleyball, so I'm so glad that it was volleyball. Thank God it wasn't like, sorry, soccer people, but I don't know. Well, April, this has been such a great conversation. I think a lot of people who are just starting out or moms of, aspiring athletes will get a lot from this conversation and your insight, and you are so inspirational. I actually think you're one of the best coaches that I know, and you're a wonderful mom. So thanks for coming on the show, and everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.
bye.